Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. Rangers beat the Canucks 2-0 in Vancouver, a much-needed win for the Rangers. It was JT Miller's return to Vancouver after spending parts of 6 seasons with the Canucks. And look, Rangers aren't going to be able to score many goals, and we know that. And look, the only way that it's going to work for them is basically playing a real detailed, structured defensive game. And I don't think that this is necessarily like a long-term success here. I think that the Rangers, what you see is kind of what you get. There's not a whole lot of talent, but hey, Mika Zibanejad scores in the first period, and they're able to hang on. Rangers played well in the first 2 periods. Jonathan Quick gets the shutout, by the way. He makes all 23 saves. And look, no Quinn Hughes for Vancouver as well. That's a huge, huge, huge loss for them. So you're not playing the Canucks at full strength. Rangers have some injuries as well, but I wouldn't say quite to that caliber for sure. But they needed to win this game because this has potential to go off the rails. I mean, just look at this road trip. It's not easy. I mean, next you got Edmonton, which is, I don't see that going well, but we'll talk about that, once we're done going through the Vancouver game. And then you go to Seattle after that, and they're off to a decent start themselves, and it looks particularly good at home. So this was one that, coming off that Calgary game, coming off of just a bad 3-game losing streak, losing to Minnesota, San Jose, and Calgary, was one you had to find a way to win, and they do that. This was more of like what we saw from games 2 through 7. More of this, where not allowing crazy high danger chances. Not to say there weren't some here and there. Like right away, there was one that Vancouver had right in front of the net. I believe it was Reichel that had the chance. But after that really settled down, I didn't love the Rangers' third period, but it could have been worse. I just felt like they sat back a bit too much. But the first 2 periods, Rangers were clearly the better team, and they deserve to win the game. Was it a 60-minute full-on effort? Maybe not. But not going to make a big deal about that. They got up to a much better start, and that was kind of what we hadn't seen for a while now, it feels like. I mean, specifically the 3-game losing streak, I guess, but it was nice to see the Rangers, take the lead, and they were able to do that late in the first period. So as far as the lineup goes, just some news here. Unfortunately, Matt Rempe is going to be out for a while. Probably a weeks to month situation. And look, it's a shame. Like that fight with Ryan Reeves, it didn't look good, but you hope that it wasn't something that would keep him out for too long of a period, but it sounds like it will. And it's not considered a season ender. And so hopefully we'll see him later on, but that's a loss. I mean, there's no doubt he adds an element to the bottom 6 that is not easily replicated at all. And, I think it might have him reconsidering, the amount of fights that he has. I know that that's not going to go away. I would doubt that's going to go away from his game, right? Like that's part of it, but he's not a great fighter. Like, and that's no slight to him, but like Ryan Reeves, like that is his calling card. He is a great fighter, even, at this latest stage in his career. And he took some big blows from Reeves, and, now he's going to be sidelined for a while. So that's not great. With that now, actually, let's now talk about Vincent Trocheck, just on the injury news. Things are sounding better there. Sounds like he skated back-to-back days back in New York. He's not with the team out west, but I think that Trocheck should be back in the not too distant future. Now, would I say he'll be back when they come back home to take on Carolina about a week from now? I would say maybe not. But hopefully, and that's, I think, when he might be around like first. I think that's possibly when he's first eligible to come back. So that'd be great if that is the case. But chances are, I think that it might take a little bit longer than that. And he's kind of at the beginning stages now of skating, and seems like he's, finally making some real progress. But we'll see. Obviously, him coming back would be really important to this lineup. Mike Sullivan did make some changes to the lineup in this game. So Matthew Robertson, who I had said, look, Robertson has had some struggles the last few games. I've said that, and he was taken out of the lineup. Vakanainen back in, and Vakanainen, I don't know what the number on it was, but he must have been a healthy scratch the last. I guess it was when Susie. He must have been a healthy scratch in that 3-game losing streak. I think it probably starts around then. So I think Vakanainen must have been out about 3 or 4 games. I want to say 3. So he gets back in the lineup, and Robertson's out. That's going to be a thing, I believe, where it'll be, depending on the situation. Look, they won this game, and Vakanainen was all right, so he'll play next game. But I don't think it's, I think it'll be interchangeable. Could a Carson Soucy find his way into that mix? Maybe, but as of now, no. But that's what it is, and I don't want Robertson sitting on the bench for too long a period. I don't think he will. And the funny thing is, it's not like, from an age perspective, it's not like Vakanainen is that much older than Matthew Robertson. I think maybe it's a couple, like maybe 2 years older. So it's like, it's not. Robertson's reached the point of like where, even though he's a homegrown Ranger and he doesn't have much NHL experience, like it's okay. Like if he sits a few games, it's not like a huge deal to me. Even though you wanted to, like, I think a Ranger fan probably feels a little bit more of a connection to Robertson than Vakanainen, but again, it's all, it doesn't mean a whole lot at the end of the day. And so that's the switch they make. And with that, it was a defensive pairing of Soucy and Borgen, and then Vakanainen and Schneider. Now, those aren't deep pairs that are going to excite you at all, but I do think that the Soucy-Schneider pair was not good. Like I had, made that pretty clear. So by making this switch, it kind of takes away from that. Not that either of those pairings are anything to write home about, but I do think that it's a little bit, more less mistakes. I just don't like, Soucy Schneider. I just don't like that pairing. But anyway, Vakanainen in, Robertson out, and then for the forwards, Johnny Brodzinski. He'd been out for a while. He comes in for Brennan Othmann, which is not great for Othmann. The fact they made that decision after one year of Othmann in doesn't speak too highly of him. Now, obviously, he made some mistakes in that Calgary game, but he was also, he was active. Like you noticed, and that line played pretty well that he was on. But again, it gives you a little bit of an inkling. Whereas like Robertson being taken out, yes, like it shows how they feel about him too. But I don't take as much out of that because, again, like Vakanainen, like they want to get him in there. Now, Brodzinski, he had been out longer than Vakanainen had been, but I don't think Mike Sullivan is nearly as attached to Brodzinski as the old regime had been, specifically the Laviolette crew, but even, Gallant, like, Brodzinski goes all the way back to the David Quinn era. So with that, and again, Brennan Othmann out, and again, like typically when teams win, for the most part, they'll stick with the same lineup next game. So I think that yet again, it'll be no Robertson and no Othmann. But the lines were kind of back to what they had been previously. And it was Zibanejad centering Panarin and Cooley, Miller centering Sherry and Lafreniere, Laba centering Parsidin and Radish, and then Carrick centering Edstrom and Brodzinski. So basically, Brodzinski kind of takes that Rempe spot. And other than that, it's a lot of what we've seen. Laba's played a lot with Radish. And again, that top six is basically ever since Trocheck got hurt, that top six, some combination that has been what it is, right? Sherry has been in it. Obviously, we saw Radish get moved up and Cooley move out of it, but they went back to Cooley, on the Zibanejad line. So in discussing the game, and again, Jonathan Quick was the starting goalie, and Jonathan Quick has played well this year. It's been only 3 starts, but he's 2-1, and has looked pretty sharp in all 3 games. And I like to see that because he wasn't very good last year, especially in the second half. And so he has me concerned a lot, but yet I've also acknowledged that Jonathan Quick still within that, like, can give you great games. Like, he can give you shutouts. Jonathan Quick gets his 64th shutout of his career, tying Henrik Lundqvist. So, and the resume for Quick is very impressive, and it's not even compiling because I know, like, look, Jonathan Quick at this point, like, look, he's played more years and more seasons than Henrik Lundqvist did at this point. But Quick did so much of all of the bulk of those stats came with the Los Angeles Kings. But yet, this is now his third season as the backup for the Rangers, and he's done a real nice job. He really has. And it's good to know that, you can still have that sort of productivity when Igor Shesterkin's not in there. Um, but look, the Rangers played well. They gave up that early chance in front to Reichel, but I like the way they played. Again, JT Miller in his return, Carson Soucy, much lesser of a note. He also has his first game back in Vancouver. Spent a little bit, much less time than JT Miller had, but um, the Miller line had chances in this game, but unsuccessful. Miller had a great opportunity, I believe, on the power play. Speaking of that, let's go there now. Baines trips Carrick at 10:24. And the Rangers get on the power play. Rangers power play had chances but they go 0 for 3 in this game. And that is a concern that I have. And the only way to me the Rangers can really truly find success is if that power play turns it around. Like, they need it, because I think the bread and butter of this Ranger team is they're going to have to win low scoring games, not give up chances 5-on-5. And when they have their chances on the power play, taking advantage of it, which is kind of what it had been before, like, their struggles last season. Although the difference there is 5-on-5, I felt like it was more of a high danger sort of thing, where this coaching staff and the other ones preached it as well, but it's really this Ranger team, again, I keep on saying it, they don't have that much talent, especially in like the top 6 compared to other teams. And so that power play, which is comprised of all those players, needs to come through. Again, there were chances. I'm not saying that it was like such a horrible looking power play collectively in this game, but not nearly good enough. And it's concerning. Like, whereas the penalty kill has been fantastic, power play has not been. And so they don't score on that one there. But later on in the first, they get their one goal. And it's Mika Zibanejad scoring his 4th goal of the season, assisted by Will Cooley and Adam Fox, 17:28 of the first. So they get out of the defensive zone. Adam Fox, who had a really, really good game, finds Mika Zibanejad. And what I love about what Zibanejad did is he's going right down the middle, going to the dangerous area of the ice, if you will. But you also get rewarded for that. And a little bit of patience by Fox to find a streaking Zibanejad. And then it's a little bit of a give and go Will Cooley. Now, Will Cooley kind of fumbles the puck briefly, but he's able to recover just in time to find Zibanejad, who is easily able to elevate it past Thatcher Demko. Thatcher Demko has been really good so far to start this season. He's healthy, and he played well in this game, but the one goal he gives up is to Zibanejad here. And a couple of things here. First, Zibanejad, he has been the most consistent of the top 6 crew. And again, it's somewhat relative to expectations, which are less. Like, Zibanejad, at least for me, the way I feel about him is not the way it was, a few years ago. But he's engaged. Has there been mistakes? Yes. Has there been him fanning on the puck and it leading to chances the other way? Yes. But I think that Zibanejad, to be fair about it, and it's a low bar here, to be fair. But I think Zibanejad has done a nice job, honestly, in the first 11 games. Rewarded for that goal. And Adam Fox, who I briefly brought up last game, I didn't include him in that sort of category of Zibanejad, Miller, Panarin, and Lafreniere as players need to do more. I kind of softly had him in there, but Adam Fox really has done a pretty good job. It's tough. Look, there isn't that much talent around Adam Fox. And a player like that, is really best utilized when he has a lot of other offensive engines around him. But I look Adam Fox, and look, that pairing of Gavrikov and Fox, it's a good one. Gavrikov is really, really steady defensively. He's not going to provide a lot of offense, and it would be interesting to see Adam Fox with a more offensive-minded defenseman. We've never seen that. Fox, it's pretty much always been Lindgren, and of course, Keandre every now and then. But he has certainly not been blessed with more of offensive-minded defenseman with him. And that's okay. It allows Fox to kind of go up in the zone more, and Gavrikov can kind of do his thing, stand back and being smart. But want to give them their flowers, because I feel like they have obviously logged a lot of minutes, and they're very important to any success that this team will have. Gavrikov and Fox are going to be massively important. So that Ranger goal makes it 1-0. And there was another power play for the Rangers by the end of the period. Sam Carrick hits Connor Garland, who eventually leaves the game. I don't believe it was immediate. I think that Garland played a good amount, or if not all of the second period, and then maybe didn't return for the third, I think is the way it went down. And maybe it was unrelated, but he took a pretty big hit from Carrick, and it led to a fight between Marcus Pettersson, who I don't believe is much of a fighter, former Penguin most notably, and Sam Carrick drops the gloves, and they call a 2-minute roughing penalty on Pettersson. Essentially, it was an instigator, but the Rangers get that power play. And again, Sam Carrick just, that's his style of play. And, we'll talk about, later on, he's rewarded, but Carrick, look, he's someone that gets in the mix, not afraid to drop the gloves, can hold his own there. Rangers get a power play, start of the second period, but don't score on it. And then after the Ranger power play expires, Adam Edstrom interferes with Vander Kane. As far as Edstrom, it's losing Rempe probably has some effect. Like, I feel like the Edstrom Rempe, like, obviously Edstrom has been attached to Carrick ever since the beginning of last year, right? That's kind of in some ways the main duo, but the idea of Edstrom Rempe together, it is a little bit of a different element. I wonder if Edstrom's game takes a little bit of a hit with no Rempe. But Edstrom goes to the box with a Ranger penalty kill, does a great job. Vancouver had some good zone time for sure, but that Ranger penalty kill, which I believe at one point in this game was 7th in the league and probably improves, obviously, after going 3 for 3 success-wise. And then after the Rangers kill that one off, they get another power play. The Rangers, that is, and Evander Kane hooks Braden Schneider at 4:02, where the Rangers don't score. And so the score remains 1-0. I thought the Rangers played a really, really sharp first and second period. I would say the second period was better than the first period. The Rangers' second period in these 11 games, I think, has been their best. And look, I'd rather it be like if I had one period to choose, I'd say probably the third, then the first, then the second. But hey, like, it's the middle of the game. It's just something I've noticed forever, either whether it's just off of a bad start and rebounding in the second, or just kind of continuing what they've been doing. But the second period's been pretty good for them. The long change as well, for whatever that's worth. But 1-0 Rangers, end of 2. Third period, not a great one for the Rangers, and it kind of comes with the territory. But I wish they were a little more aggressive. But look, like, with the Rangers and the way they are, they don't. This is not an offensive club. This is a team that's going to have to kind of just play smart defensively and rely on good goaltending. At 1:06, Carson Soucy interferes with Elias Pettersson. Vancouver gets the power play there. They don't score. Big kill there at the start of the third period. Vancouver had opportunities for sure. I'm not going to get into like the specifics. You didn't see a whole. And look, Panarin was quiet in this game for sure. I thought the Laba line, they didn't play much, but I thought in the few chances the few times they're out there, I thought they were solid. With Radish and Parson, and they probably played maybe a little bit less, but about the same as the Carrick line. Again, there's that clear divide between top 6 and bottom 6 currently. And they'll probably remain the same when Trudger comes back, assuming Zibanejad goes on Miller's wing. It'll still be that clear divide. But some teams, it's more, hey, they have 3 lines, then the fourth is like this big distinguishable characteristic. With the Rangers, it's the top 6 and bottom 6. And again, the top 6 needs to do a lot more. And eventually, Vancouver does pull the goalie, and the Rangers get an empty net goal. Sam Carrick gets his first goal of the season. Doesn't feel that way, right? Because there's certain games you think about where he had a lot of chances. Like, he has had assists, but he gets his first goal of the season, empty net goal, assisted by Lafreniere and Fox. I found it interesting that Lafreniere was out there at that point. It was Miller, Carrick, and Lafreniere that were out there. Which, look, on the one hand, like, good for Sullivan for like having Lafreniere play in the situation, but it was risky. It was an offensive zone draw for Vancouver. Like, essentially what happens there is it's basically that same Miller line, except Carrick for Sherry. And I don't know, I would have maybe thought that Sullivan would have trusted Sherry more than Lafreniere, but again, all works out. Carrick, kind of a fortunate one there. And this has happened a lot against the Rangers, where he kind of shoots it from his own blue line thereabouts. and it finds its way in. It didn't look like it was going to, but it does. And by getting an empty net goal, that saves the Rangers from 90 seconds of, kind of just hoping that they don't allow a goal. And Quick made some good saves along the way. So the Rangers take a 2-0 lead there, assisted by Lafreniere and Fox. So Adam Fox gets a couple assists on the night. Deserved in terms of, he was really arguably maybe the best player on the ice tonight, Adam Fox. 1918, Will Cooley slashes Pettersson. So, a little bit of a chance there for Vancouver, 6-on-4. But at the end of the day, the Rangers get the 2-0 win. And after the whistle, 20-minute mark, Kiefer Sherwood, 2-minute penalty for unsportsmanlike conduct, just hits Gavrikov unnecessarily. That's Sherwood's style. It wasn't an egregious hit. It was just late and just not needed. And Jonathan Quick even got in there. Quick and Sherwood were going at it. That's what you got to love about Jonathan Quick. He's not afraid to do that. I mean, Shesterkin will do that too, but, Quick gets the shutout and he's in there, kind of, throwing some jabs at Sherwood, but Rangers win it 2-0. Again, gives Zibanejad credit for getting that goal in the first period. Rangers improved to 4-5-2, and now they'll face Edmonton, who they played pretty well against at home. That was the stretch where they were playing good hockey, but getting shut out and, allowed, it was one goal too many, basically, in that game. And this is going to be tough. And look, if you go back to last season, when Drury sent the memo out, it was after the Calgary and Edmonton loss. They got beat up in Edmonton. It was bad, really, really bad. And Edmonton, they're especially good at home. It's been the case this season. They're coming off of a win against Utah. Edmonton's overall record isn't great. I think they might be somewhere around like 5-4-1. But they're dangerous. Like, this is going to be tough. And 5-4-2, actually. So yeah, Edmonton's off to like a pretty pedestrian start. But you know what they have. And just knowing the Rangers the way I know them and this team, it's going to be difficult. I'm assuming that Igor will be back in there. That would be despite Quick getting the shutout. But like, if the Rangers can win that game and do it in somewhat of an impressive fashion, then we're talking. Like, not to take anything away from this, but look, it was a Vancouver Canucks team without Quinn Hughes. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of firepower on the Vancouver side. So Rangers are going to have to find a way to get points, even though it's early in the season, even though they're only 11 games in. Like, I really fear like this could go off the rails if they don't start consistently picking up wins. But look, on the road, they've done well. Despite that loss to Calgary, which was a bad one, 4-1-1 on the road. So they got to keep that up. They've been playing probably a little bit more of a simplistic game on the road. Not to say there weren't some good home games thrown in there, even though they couldn't score. But that's the Rangers. The biggest test for them and the biggest test of patience is that they can't chase the offense, because they do that, they're fucked. They're not going to be able to score that much. And so they're going to have to basically, stick to the process, stick to the system that Mike Sullivan is trying to implement. And that's going to give them the best chance of winning. And like I said, like that power play, when you do get those opportunities, it needs to do a whole lot better than it has. And, as we close here, I want to just get the stat for where they sit power play percentage wise. Yeah, not a surprise. They're right around like 28. They're right around bottom 5 in the league in power play. That checks out. And that's basically what it was last year. And whereas now, yes, the Rangers are top 5 penalty kill wise. It's been what it's been. Rangers have been mostly sound defensively, goaltending, and that does lead to, that's good habits. And that is what you're looking for. I'm happy about that. Obviously what we saw, in that 3-game losing streak was really bad and concerning, but Rangers are going to have to stay with it. So Rangers now 1-1 on the road trip and their losing streak. In JT Miller's return to Vancouver, Rangers win 2-0, a Jonathan Quick shutout. And now the Rangers will head to Edmonton to take on the Oilers.